Welcome to Stories of Brisco. Jerry, shut up. We're starting the show. Welcome to Stories of Brisco.
We're going to start, man.
Welcome to Stories with that guy and Bradshaw.
I'm over here, not down there. That's Mojo. There you are.
He's the Chicken Shell Hall of Famer who spent 7 years in 8th grade. Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And we got Get Hot, Stay Hot. We got a guy who was the 1,000-time 24/7 champion, Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal winner. Now he's created his own business. He went to work for Morgan Stanley about age 7, I believe, from what I read on the internet. It's got to be right if it's on the internet. He's our good friend, Mr. Mojo Rawley. Mojo, welcome to the show.
Sirs, thank you so much for having me on. I felt like I needed to wear a tuxedo or something being there with the likes of you Hall of Famers, man. I got to step my game up today.
Hey, man, welcome to the show, Mojo. And, man, it's an honor to have you on here. Anytime anybody that spent 7 years in the 7th grade, you know, I have a hard time getting on. But I could hear you guys talking before John would even let me in the room. I think
for those that are wondering, Mr. Brisco has been on here for 150-something straight weeks, and he still can't figure out Zoom. So we're getting started about 3 hours late because Mr. Brisco couldn't get on Zoom.
Now, wait a minute, John. If I could hear you guys talking, that shows you that I was on, man. But the guy the master controller, which is you, see, I'm pointing the right direction, which is you, would not push that button. He probably couldn't figure out, let Brisco win. Hell with him. Me and Mojo's having a good conversation. But, yeah. How did you know I spent 7 years in the 8th grade, Mojo?
I plead the 5th. I have no idea what's happening.
Hell, I ended up marrying my teacher. That's how I got out.
I need to just be in the waiting room for all future episodes so I can just listen to this back and forth, man. I'm loving this.
Mojo, did you power clean 390 pounds?
In college, I did, actually.
I was looking at, on the internet, which Abe Lincoln says everything on the internet's true. Abe, I saw that on the internet, so it's got to be true.
I trained Abe Lincoln, too. Don't forget that.
That's right. Jerry fought him in his 6th year of 7th grade. But I saw that freaking 390-pound power clean. I mean, that's for those of us that like 4 wheels is a certain way. That's 15 pounds from 4 wheels. I mean, that is incredible.
Oh, that was my college weight too, man. Actually, when I was playing for the Cardinals, I repped out 500 at one point. I mean, I feel it every bit of that now in my back years later. But man, in college at Maryland, our strength coach Deej Galt, man, power clean was the lift. I mean, that was power clean day was when the whole team came together. There wasn't lifting groups. I mean, everybody was in there going absolutely nuts, chopping each other, screaming in each other's face. So, I mean, the power clean, the most explosive lift. I mean, that was our go-to. So, yeah, 390 in college. I did that without straps, I'll say. And then, later on when I gained all my weight to play nose guard in the league, got up to 500. But, yeah, that was my favorite lift, man. That was my best one.
For those out there that are wanting, let go to the gym, and, that's 5 plates on each side is 500. That's 495. I mean, that is unbelievable. That's something that most will never be able to deadlift, and you got it up to your shoulders.
Yeah, hang clean, too. Actually, I think I was a better hang cleaner than power. The difference, of course, being from the hang is when you're starting power, you start it from a deadlift. But yeah, man, that fast twitch, I tried to keep that and bring it over to wrestling. That was kind of my athletic MO when I was wrestling, was always trying to keep that hype lifestyle. So that was it.
I always thought power clean was the most important lift for a football player. Everything about a power clean is what you do as a football player. When you talk about how you roll your hips, you talk about how you explode.
Describe to us guys out there that don't know power lift, which there's a lot of us out there. What makes the power lift so important? Is it blast off speed or what? What is it?
Go ahead, Mojo.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the way I always looked at it was hip explosion. I mean, you're driving your hips forward. So if you're coming off the line of scrimmage and you're hitting the lineman, if you're playing linebacker, you're coming down to fill the gap. Hell, if you're a running back, you're trying to truck somebody, running them over. I mean, that's all that hip drive and strength. And again, it's that speed, that fast twitch, moving very quickly. And that's kind of what the power clean tested. Because for me, you know, if you're doing a bench and squat, everyone always gets caught up on the bench and squat, but when you're lifting heavy weight like that, that's teaching you to move slow. So you can be strong as hell, but if you can't catch anybody, what good is that going to do for you? So that snap, and I gotta think that translates over to the wrestling world too. I mean, not only pro wrestling, but you know, amateur wrestling as well. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's even more important there. But yeah, that was the lift that tested, you know, that quality, and that was why I liked it so much.
Yeah, and Jerry, every coach will tell you either side of the ball, the way you engage a player and the way you drive them or knock them back is get your hips underneath you, roll your hips. They have all kinds of different phraseology for it, but they're talking about bringing your hips in and and that's the one thing a power clean does is when you bring it up to explode, you've got to roll your hips. And it's exactly what you do when you hit somebody. If you want to get power on them, is hit them and then roll your hips in, and it drives them back. But that's exactly what a power clean does.
You know all through school you always hear how important hips are in all the sports, and in amateur wrestling is your hip control. I mean, it's the main. That's the reason they say a lot of wrestlers make good football players, because they control those hips. You know, when you're playing the line or exploding through as a running back. You know, swivel your hips or whatever. But you know, back in my day, we barely had weights, but when we did. As a wrestler, the coaches did not want you working out with weights. Which you look back on it, that's the most stupid, ridiculous thing that I ever went through. I really regret that you know, we were not pushed to go into weight training, because you get that big bulk on you. They figured it slowed you down, but it never did, and it made you stronger for the sport there. But wrestling coaches were so far behind the game back in my day there, but. The football players, you know, they were all on the weights and everything, and all the wrestlers. Man, I want those big biceps so I can flash them to the girls too. You know, 'cause back there we wore those tank tops just like you got on, Mojo. That must be one of my old tank tops.
Hey, and weights weren't as heavy back then either, were they, Jerry?
No, they were just starting out. Well, we used center blocks. I mean, we didn't have center blocks. So
like 45 pounds, there was only about 20. It was way back. It was way back then.
Yeah, and you know, we go out and cut down a tree or just tackle a tree and get your branch off of it and be strong enough to hold those two center blocks on the end of it. But yeah, we made do, John. We made do. You know, I took your big ass down plenty of time with those center blocks. So you know,
you did. Yeah, my record against you is I'm about as good as the Worsted Generals against the Globetrotters against you, Jerry.
Yeah.
Mojo, the worst thing in the world, when Jerry starts drinking a little bit of that fire water, as he calls it, he starts looking a little bit at you side-eyed. He starts walking at you kind of a little bit crooked. You're like, I need to go to my room now, because I've been here before. I've seen this movie. This doesn't end well.
Mojo, take us back a little bit. You know, when you're a little Mojo and your youth, you had quite a high school football career and everything. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to be the athlete that you became.
Yeah, I mean, I started playing football. When did I start? Actually, I tried out for the city team, and I was out there. I had to go and lose weight because it was some sort of combination of age and weight back then. It wasn't just by, you know, what grade you were in, you know, it was a combination of size as well. So I had to like lose weight to play for the 7th grade team. And I went up running sprints with a garbage bag on, trying to sweat it out. And I'm eating.
And how old are you? 13?
Yeah. Yeah, probably about that 12, 13, something like that.
And you're having to lose weight to play with
Yeah, to play football of all sports.
Football,
yeah. I'm sitting there eating lean cuisines every day. I'm starving at all times. I finally lose the weight to make this team, and then not enough players showed up, and they threw out the entire season. I was like, damn it, all that work, about to faint on the track every single day, can't breathe, sweating, whatever. But played for the high school team the next year. I actually went to the high school from the movie Remember the Titans.
T.J. Wilson, man. T.J. Wilson. Alexander, Alexander, or Maryland.
T.C. Williams and Alexandria, Virginia. But yeah, we're right on the border of Maryland, so kind of the same thing. But yeah, we had a team. I can't say it was a good team. I won 4 games in the course of 4 years for 4 different head coaches. I mean, we were like the
Wow.
worst team in the state, but I love ball, man. I wanted to play. I was good at it. We didn't have a great team, but small victories is all you could hope for in a team like that. And no college scouts were coming around to check us out. So I actually had to go to a Division III school for 2 years, Christopher Newport in Virginia Beach, and I loved it there. It was really cool to be a part of a team where everybody was working hard and everybody was applying themselves, but always wanted to go D1. So I left the school after 2 years and actually left behind my academic scholarship there and walked on at Maryland. Did 3 years there. The rest is history. But yeah, man, it was a gamble. It was the first big life gamble I took that I think worked out in the end, because I believe I left Maryland with about 150,000 in student debt. And
Wow.
coming in as a guy that was on a full academic, that's a big risk, especially when you're going from D3, the lowest level of college ball, to D1, the highest. So there was no guarantees I was going to play as a walk on. And I mean, you guys know how a walk on's life can be. I mean, the college coaches, they don't necessarily want you to make the team, and they don't want you to play, because if you made it as a walk on, that means you beat out a scholarship guy that they put their names on, that they went and recruited, and they went to that person's house and promised their parents that they'd make their team and all these things, and then some Joe Schmoes off the street is taking their spot. So it's an uphill battle, but honestly, I'm glad that it happened. It keeps you humble. It makes you work harder for things. You realize that nothing will ever be given to you. Even if you earn it, you got to take it. And I'm grateful for that. I think that helped me out later on, and in pro wrestling and careers after.
You
In
you
fact,
mentioned something. You mentioned something there too. You were on an academic scholarship, and that means you had something up here more so than doing those dead weights. There, you were a smart guy to get those academic scholarship. It takes a lot, but yeah, man. You mentioned also the debt now. These kids nowadays. I mean, what I give. I mean, hell. Even wrestling, which is a minor sport. Some of these kids are making 150, $200,000 a year. I mean, that NIL has completely changed the game. And yeah, I heard you guys talking before John would let me in the room and join the conversation. I mean, he kept me out of the room for quite a while, but talking about these guys, who would want to go to pros them now, and then, especially if you're a marginal player and make the minimum, when you can stay in college and probably pull in a million or so bucks playing college ball under that NIL deal. Things have changed a lot, haven't they? What do you think of that?
Well, first of all, I love it because, when I was playing at Maryland, I was playing on national TV every week and paying for school for part of my career. I thought that was, what the hell kind of rule with that was that? And I had the highest GPA on the team every year. So it's like, I'm paying for school and playing. Like, what a rip. Now, like, that's not even a concern for guys, which is awesome because, luckily, I made some money, in the NFL and obviously in WWE. So life worked out. But if it didn't, I'm starting out my life with 150 grand in debt. Like we can see for most people how long that can take to pay off. So now if you're in a situation where you can monetize your hard work in college at a younger age, that makes a lot of sense. And then you factor in all the players that are dominant college players, but their game doesn't really apply to the pro level. Maybe they're, a step slow, whatever the situation might be. That, gives those guys a future. I think about players like Tim Tebow, actually, because yeah, he was drafted high, and yes, he had a career in the NFL, but imagine if that guy was able to make money in college. That would have been way more than he was making in the pros. And then now guys want to stay back and finish their educations, which is also a good thing because, again, with sports, you don't know how long it's going to last. I mean, even if you're a first round pick, some of those guys don't even make it through their first rookie contract, which is, most people didn't see that coming, or else they wouldn't have gone in the first round. But yeah, I mean, I like it. I do have some concerns over how that might change and manipulate the game for young, impressionable kids, most of whom haven't had enough education in protecting themselves. I'm curious to see where that goes, but I think we're probably at least a few years away before that becomes a major concern.
Yeah,
You know, I just hope these kids have financial people that can teach them. You know, hey, that money you're making is not free money. You got to pay taxes on this money. Don't go out and you buy all these Lamborghinis and crap like that. You know, then April 15th come along. Hey, where am I going to get the money to pay Uncle Sam? You know, because he does get his money.
And Mojo, I thought, I love the fact that the young kids are getting money. I played when, we didn't have any transfer rules that were, you could do anything, which is another reason you took
a stipend. Did you get a stipend while you were in school?
No,
I got 20, this is 1965, 64, 65. I got $25 a month was my stipend. For that $25, I had to sweep the floors, I had to mop up the sweater basketball play, I had to run the chain gangs and all that, and I got $25 a month. And if you missed one of your assignments, they deducted you part of your money out of your check.
NCAA rules are nasty, man. So when I was at Maryland, I had my academic scholarships, and some of them I could have actually brought over because it didn't matter what school I was going to. But because of the NCAA rules at the time, I couldn't even have my own academic scholarships. Like, forget the team and the school giving me money. We weren't allowed to bring in anything. And then as walk-ons too, was even worse. We weren't allowed to eat in the team dining hall. So after, 2 days when everyone's eating and we're starving and we're broke and we're in debt and we got nothing, those guys are getting lobster and, filet and all this stuff. And, we can't even afford McDonald's at the time. So, I mean, I really don't know how we were paying for food and things like that, but it was held against you every step of the way. It was pretty rough. So I'm glad that that's gone.
Isn't the NCAA one of the most dysfunctional organizations in the history of the world?
Awful.
It's unbelievable how bad they are. They
still survived, and they survived through all that stuff too.
Yeah, and I thought Mojo, since they started, paying these kids, which I'm glad they are. I think the transfer portal to me is the one thing that needs to be fixed. I think they've gone too far with letting kids, transfer from semester to semester. There's no loyalty there now. Do you feel the same way about that?
I do. I don't love that part. I mean, in some circumstances, I get it. I mean, I know when I transferred up from my small school to my big school, they made me sit out a year. For that, I kind of understood it because I was like, well, that just gives the small schools a chance to, survive. Otherwise, the big schools will just go pull all their All-Americans every single year. I mean, it sucks for a guy like me because I'm the one that's being penalized for that, by losing an entire year. But yeah, transferring back and forth. I mean, eventually, I don't know if they want to put a cap on that because when guys leave college and they played for 4 different schools, I mean, it really is becoming like the pros because that's what happens at the pro level. I don't know exactly how I would go about fixing that because again, every situation is a little bit different, but you do hate to see it when it's that much because clearly at that point, education is meaningless. It has no factor whatsoever. They're probably learning nothing. Even after all that, they're probably leaving with no degrees because I believe a lot of schools you can only carry over, credits for 2 years. I mean, at least that was the rules when I was in school. It might be different now. And then you lose your credits after that. So at that point, you're just spinning your wheels academically. You're getting nothing for it.
So at Maryland, you played pretty much every position on the defensive line, right?
Yes, sir.
And you did that. You're the only one that did it in a season. So you played. I mean, is that not a vast difference from playing? Because people don't understand they don't playing from the interior of the defensive line to the rush ends. I mean, those are complete different positions. Did you? What was your favorite?
I hated playing defensive end. I don't like running around people. I like running through people. I was a very physical player, so. That was my favorite. Yeah, my senior year was kind of weird because the way we had our defense formatted, I was kind of like a flex guy. So I played primarily interior, but my body weight through my senior year ranged from 275 to 305. And every week, depending on, what our defense was going to be, I would either gain or lose weight because I could do so very quickly at that time, man. I could gain or lose 10 pounds in 2 days, no problem, without like even barely trying because of how much cardio I was doing. But my favorite position on the D line is if we were in like a dime situation and I got to play. Actually, it didn't even have to be pass rush, but I like to play the zero head up on the center. And if I had a two-way go in either A gap, oh man, that was game over. That was my best spot to play. All kinds of head games you can play from that position. You are in the center of the action, which I loved for the run, but for pass, it was a little tough because it was really hard to get sacks because you're literally right in front of the quarterback's face. So if you come free, you're the first person he sees. It's easy for him to roll out. So that part made it a little tough. But yeah, that was my favorite position for sure.
Yeah, and the nose tackle should never get a sack. I mean, never. I mean, they shouldn't, because you got to run over the center to get to the quarterback, and he can trip. You should trip, but you've got two guards on both sides that help at all times. Mm-hmm. So if you're running an odd front, I mean, a nose tackle is so valuable. But to me, I've always thought it's the hardest position to rush the quarterback because you've got so many double team options. There's always somebody free to hit you.
Yeah, I think I was second or third on my team in sacks that year, and I had 2.5. We did not rush the quarterback in that defense, man. I was very much looking forward to that in later years, so I could like actually shoot gaps and try to make plays. But yeah, it wasn't a whole lot of penetration going on at that point.
Now, when you were at Maryland, were there any guys that went on to make a big time in the NFL or were your teammates?
Yeah, actually, so my senior year, we were very senior heavy, actually. What was the exact number? We had something like 30 seniors, and we had, I want to say like 14 or 15 of us made it to the NFL, which was really cool. I want to say we had like 7 draft picks. That year we had Darius Hayward-Bay, who was a first-round pick to the Oakland Raiders. He actually went out and ran the fastest 40 at the combine that year. It was like a 4.21 or wow. Maybe it was even a 4.19 unofficial. It was crazy. I mean, it was lightning fast. And yeah, Al Davis was all about that. So he picked him up early. Torrey Smith was another wide receiver. He wasn't a senior that year. He was a couple years later. But he ended up going off and winning 2 Super Bowl rings with the Niners. The Niners and the Ravens, I believe. Had a really good career. But yeah, we had some guys that played a pretty long time. We had a really good year.
And during this time in college, were you a wrestling fan? Was wrestling something that you enjoyed?
It was, but I really didn't watch it that much, if I'm being honest. So the way I've kind of always been is I'm very all into what I'm doing, right? So I was a wrestling fan as a kid. I watched all the way through high school, really. And then as college and academics and everything, I tried to focus a little bit more on that. So, I mean, I was still watching wrestling from time to time, but it wasn't anything like before or after. And, it's kind of the same token. The second I started with WWE, I literally just stopped watching football altogether. I mean, I actually tried not to watch anything because I didn't want to, distort my focus or anything like that. But yeah, it was cool to try and check in. But yeah, it was tough. I don't know. It was in my mind. I always needed to be on one track, kind of a thing.
Yeah, the area that you grew up in too, you had a choice of great wrestling. You had, I guess, WCW. Mid Atlantic was probably gone at that time, but you had WCW and you also had WWE right in your neighborhood there. So that'd be cool when you did watch. Did anybody, any of those individuals from either one of those organizations stand out to you and say, "Man, this is cool. One day I'd like to do that"?
Well, I mean, especially when I started playing football, anyone that kind of did both was right up my alley. I mean, when I was super young, I mean, Ultimate Warrior was my guy, just the energy and the colors, and I'm sure that comes as a surprise to nobody. I mean, shoot, we got some people on this call right now that I used to be a big fan of when I was watching. Goldberg was another big one with the spear. I mean, I just like those really intense guys, physical, brawling brutes. I mean, watching, the high flyers and all was entertaining for me, but that was never something that was of huge interest to me. I mean, that was never, I don't think I ever came off the top rope in a single match of mine in my entire 10 years with WWE. But that
I did
physicality.
it 30 years. I never went off the top rope.
Yeah.
Mojo, they asked
I
me,
played those guys.
Mojo, one day Ron's standing out there watching a bunch of young kids go over a bunch of stuff, flips and flops and all this crazy stuff. And somebody asked, turned to Ron and go, Ron, what would you do if they called that with you in the ring? He said, tag John. I said, no, you're not.
Both left the ring.
That's right. So Mojo, you, when you come out of college, that's you end up you went as a walk on for the NFL, right? You end up signing with the NFL, and so tell us the process of going through that.
That was pretty crazy, actually. So I had a pretty good senior year, and I thought it was enough to, get a look by somebody. And for me, the thing that I was holding on to was my pro day. I was like, this is the day I'm gonna get drafted, because I had all the strength and speed records at Maryland. So I still remember it. I ran a 4.78 at 300 and I think it was 310 pounds at that time.
Wow.
I had the Maryland record for the 225 reps in college. It was 36. I would have easily gotten over 40 when we did it for the scouts. I had the vertical record. That was a 36.5. I think the shuttle was a 4.37. I just knew that when I performed for the scouts and they could see me move in person, I was like, I'm not going to get drafted high, but I definitely got a shot at being somewhere in the 5 to 7 rounds. 4 or 5 days before my pro day, I pulled my hamstring doing a 40, and it killed my stock. I remember jumping like a 33.5 vertical off of one leg because I was so pissed off that I couldn't run for him, that my stock was going to get killed. My bench press actually was terrible that day. I think I did 34 on the reps for the scouts, but I couldn't put my legs under me because my hamstring was so jacked up. So I was like all flat legs. I had like no power base, which really set me back. But either way, draft comes, was hoping for a late shot, name doesn't get called. So I'm calling my agent and I'm like, hey, what is it looking like? Is someone going to pick me up undrafted free agent? He was like, no takers right now. So I was like, literally, I just felt like my world was imploding. I mean, obviously I, worked really hard in school, so I always had a backup plan there, but it wasn't at all what I wanted. I wanted to play in the league after putting in all this time in college. Um, so he calls me back and he was like, all right, well, we got you a tryout. The Packers want to bring you in on a tryout. And he said they're going to bring in like 30 or so players to try out with the team for mini camp. At the end, they'll pick a small handful. And man, I'll tell you, I swear, as soon as he told me that, I just knew in my head that I made the team. Like I knew if I had that shot, I was gonna get it. And I don't know if it was just because I was a walk-on at Maryland and had to do the same thing there, if I just felt like I wanted it more than everyone and I could get there and do well. But that's what happened, man. I went in there and again, 30 guys trying out at the end of the weekend. They signed 3 of us. But I mean, I treated that weekend like it was the Super Bowl. I'm screaming, I'm hooting and hollering, I'm calling for the huddle as a nose guard. I'm running. If the wide receivers and the running backs caught a pass 40 yards downfield, I'm not stopping until I'm in the end zone, finishing out their rep with them, and then I'm going to be the first one back to the huddle. It was that kind of thing, and that was where my conditioning really helped me out and helped me stand out in those situations. But yeah, I made the team, and out of the 3 guys they picked up, one of the other guys was also a Maryland Terrapin too, one of our offensive tackles, which was really cool. And that was kind of my way in, man. It was a really cool thing. One of the best moments of my life was being told I made it.
What was the process of that? I mean, did you know during the week that and your attitude and your confidence, I know I'm going to make this, but as the week's going along, did the coaches or any of the staff kind of give any encouragement, say, hey, you got the upper hand here, keep going, or anything? How did you find out, and where were you, and what was your reaction?
So I knew nothing, but apparently if it was either after the first day or the first practice on the first day, I guess the GM called my agent and told him that they were going to pick me up. So I guess I made a strong impression from the start, but he didn't tell me anything. He was like, "Yeah, I'm not sure. Just keep working hard. Just assume you didn't, like you suck or whatever." It's I'm glad he said that because I just, kept going. And we were hitting out there too. I mean, that weekend, we didn't have full pads on. We had helmets and the shells or whatever, not the shoulder pads, but the under pads. And we were banging out there, man. We were trying to kill each other. But at the end of the weekend, after the last practice, they told me that I didn't I had forgotten to sign my liability waiver for the weekend. So me and this guy Dane Randolph, our offensive tackle from college, and the other player, I think it was a DB, they're like, all three of you idiots forgot to sign your paperwork. You got to come up and sign it before you go home. So I was like, all right, cool. And they take us up to the room. The GM's in there, the coaches are in there, and they're like, we just wanted to let you gentlemen know that you're now a part of the Green Bay Packers organization. And the other two guys, I won't forget it. They were standing there. They're like, all right, bet, cool. And I was like, yeah, baby, I went nuts. I'm jumping all over the place, dapping up all the coaches, hugging everybody. I was losing my mind. I was like, I know they're trying to be professional, but that's not my style. So we're just going to let it all out here. And they were cracking up. And, I think it was cool going into camp because I had a really good relationship with the team and the coaches and the players. And, that was my thing is if I'm going to be an undrafted or not a walk-on, but an undrafted free agent, hopefully I can kind of supersede that and not be looked or perceived as that. I got to find a way to be bigger than I possibly can be here and do the best I can. So it was a really cool way to get picked up.
One of the dumbest things they do in football is the helmet only. You can do that with veterans because they're not going to kill each other, but a bunch of young guys that are trying to make a team, you need to put at least shoulder pads on them because they're going to hit each other.
The center that I was teeing off on all week, I remember afterwards he couldn't lift his arms. I felt bad for him because I was just like blasting him in the shoulder, trying to outmaneuver him and hold my gap and things like that. It was nasty. I mean, all of us came back black and blue, but
it's just stupid. I've been there a million times. We all have. We put just the helmet on you, and now when you're playing against another guy, that's a veteran or something, you're fine. You're nobody's going to get hurt. But when you got young guys trying to make a team, that's all you've done is give them a weapon on the head and go, okay, guys, try not to get hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, though. With those veterans, if you're a young guy, don't pull that crap with them. That's your first way off that team.
Oh my God. I was lined up one time in Raider training camp and they had, slip cut, which they've now made illegal because they think it's a high-low block. It's really not. The guard goes through, but he is kind of engaged and the tackle cuts the defensive tackle. Defensive linemen used to hate it because they thought it was a high-low. It really wasn't, but they've outlawed it since, which they should do because the tackle really is engaged. And Howie Long was right there. And so I called a Max Montoya beside me. I said, slip cut. And Howie just looks up like this. And he goes, John boy, if you cut me in practice, this is going to be the longest day of your life. And I said, Mr. Long, I would never cut you in practice. And he goes, then we're going to get along just fine. I went through. He let me block him. He just took a re-up.
I used to hate those situations, man, because, again, for me as a guy that was never drafted high, it's like any rep we have, I don't care if it's a walkthrough, like I have to make an impression here. Like I have to do something. I have to be productive. I can't just take a play off. But at the same time, if you're going against a Howie Long, if you hit them, they're going to cut you. You got to.
That's right.
That. So it's like, what do you do? I don't know what to do here. I hated those situations.
I did too, because it's a worse situation to be in, for us, they're trying to make the team against some, the legendary guy who's going to be in the Hall of Fame, like I really don't want to cut him, but if I don't do my job. If I do, I'll probably cut.
Yeah, I'd rather not even have the rep. I mean, I'm at that time, if you get a rep, that is a gift. You need your reps, but that is a rep I just would rather not be a part of.
Did you freak out a little bit in the Packer locker room when you see some of the guys?
Not really. I never really I wasn't really one to get starstruck that much. Actually, I in a wrestling locker room, I did a couple of times actually, but I didn't in the locker room. Aaron Rodgers was just getting going. I think it was like his second year starting when I got there, which is crazy considering he's still doing it. There was a couple of linemen that I was, familiar obviously with their work and whatnot. But yeah, not so much in the locker room. It was more when I got on the field. My first rep actually in my first preseason game, we were playing the Browns, and I think that's when it hit me because the quarterback extended the count, and we were just sitting out there for what felt like forever, and it gave me enough time to realize like this was my first rep playing in Lambeau Field, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And as I was thinking that, they snapped the ball, and I had a crappy play. Like pulled on a screen. I was like, damn it. Told the coach that afterwards. He thought it was hilarious. But yeah, that was when I had kind of like my moment, like reality set in.
And how long were you totally in the league?
I was there 2 years. So I played I went through camp with Green Bay. When I went there, I thought they were bringing me in to play defensive end because I was only 290 at the time. And then they put me in at nose guard right away. So thank goodness I'd memorized the playbook for all the positions like I used to do in college, because otherwise I wouldn't have known the playbook. But they wanted me to play nose. They had just drafted BJ Raji in the first round, who was like 335 pounds. The starter, Ryan Pickett, was like 350 or 360. Wow. And then I was 290. So I was like, this isn't adding up. So I ended up getting released there. They were trying to see if I could get up to that weight. And I was like, there's just no way I'm going to be able to do that this season. So that was that. I got let go there. Got picked up by the Cardinals the next year. I couldn't get re-signed until I got to at least like 315, 320 in body weight. And then I got re-signed immediately, which I thought was a crazy thing because weight's just a number, but that they have their checkpoints and their guidelines. If you don't fulfill them, they're not going to look at you. I had a injury in Arizona that year, my second year, that I thought was a career ender at the time. My calf popped and it was a complete tear. It rolled up in the back of my knee like a window shade. You could fit your whole fist where my calf used to be. It was so nasty. But I was out 18 months from that injury before I made a full recovery. They said it was career ending. Luckily, I was able to find a way to come back from it. And then that's when I was talking to the Jets and the Raiders, actually, and I was thinking I was going to go to one of them when I had this opportunity to, meet with WWE and have a conversation there. And then I kind of got to a place where I got to choose where I wanted to go, and I came running over to wrestling, actually.
How did that happen, Mojo? How did that opportunity come about?
So while I was rehabbing, I'm trying to refocus on what I wanted to do next in life because I thought I was done. I didn't think I could play anymore. I had a job opportunity to go work for Merrill Lynch and go back to finance, which was always my background. But the Gronkowski family, their dad was like a second dad to me. Like those brothers, have always been some of my very best friends. So we were watching Raw one day and we were talking about, wrestling, and, they knew I was a big wrestling fan from before. So they were like, Mojo, you should like leave football and just go wrestle. I was like, oh yeah, let me just call Vince and see if they got a job for me. I've never trained a day in my life. I've watched on TV. That doesn't exactly qualify me to become a pro wrestler, right? But it turns out their dad was college roommates with Mike Rotunda at Syracuse.
Wow.
So Big G called over to Mike. They had a conversation. There was a live event in Buffalo coming up sometime in the future. So we all went. They got us front row tickets to go watch, and we're watching the show. Main event was Kane and Cena. I remember Dolph Ziggler wrestled on that card and was unbelievably entertaining. Some of the stuff he was saying, I was like, okay, now that was my first time seeing a show in person. So I was like, okay, I knew I liked this before, but now actually being there, I was like, all right, maybe this isn't so crazy after all that I could actually.
It was a house show event, not a TV event, right?
Yeah, it was a house show.
That's even better because you get to see more personality of the guys than just that stoic TV march in and out, right?
Oh man, Dolph came to the ring and he had his like entrance jacket, and obviously wasn't on TV, so he could say this. I've told him this story before too, but he gave his jacket to the ref, and he told the ref, he was like, "Don't give this jacket to anybody, including kids with cancer." And I mean, it was so ridiculous. Our whole group, like all of us, lost our minds laughing because that's the stuff you don't really hear on TV. I mean, maybe now
I wonder why.
Yeah. Yo, we were dying laughing, and then we just had the best time ever at the show. And then they brought us backstage afterwards to meet everybody. I remember Ryback walking up, and I was like, "All right, I might have to lose this lineman weight and get a little more dice because this is absurd seeing everyone back here." But yeah, it went great. They scheduled a little tryout for me to go to Raw in DC, back where I'm from, and I cut a promo with Regal backstage. I got to meet a bunch of the guys and just see, and they asked me if this is something I wanted to do, and I was like, hell yeah. And then that was it. They brought me in, and that was the FCW, the last year of FCW before they moved to Orlando.
Isn't Regal great backstage when he's trying to tell you a promo? He's so thorough and he's so good at describing how you should cut that promo. Did he give you the same lessons he gives the guys down at NXT?
Yeah, it was he was awesome because you're right. I think especially when you're new in pro wrestling and you have so many different coaches and
Hey, Hulk Hogan, brother.
It's easy to get mixed up, right? From
Yeah.
one
Is it ever? That's one piece of advice I give to every new person that comes in is everybody's got an opinion, does not make it right. Just take it all in, put it in a blender, and use what you think's right. Because everybody's trying to help, but everybody's viewpoint, a lot of are all different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can overwhelm you because you get all this feedback from people who are very well meaning, but they give you all this feedback, and you're like, the hell do I do now? You're getting a million different ideas.
Paralysis by analysis. It almost like makes it worse in the end because you're trying to combine all these things, and at the end of the day, you're not thinking or doing anything organically, and it takes a while to get through that. So, but yeah, Regal was awesome. I mean, he actually kept it very simple that day. He was just, his big thing was be authentic. Tell me your story. Tell me about yourself. Like, let's see a little bit of energy. Put you into this. Don't play wrestler, be a wrestler, kind of a thing. So it was really cool, and I tried to maintain that as much as I could throughout my entire career. I think that was a huge asset.
And who did you first report to did you report right away down to FCW?
Yeah, so we moved to Tampa pretty quickly. Yeah, Coach Bill DeMott was the head coach there. This was not long before Billy Gunn got started as a coach. Terry Taylor was there, Norman Smiley, Joey Mercury. I think those were the four main coaches, of course, for the in-ring, and then Dream, of course, was everything for promos, and we got to work closely with him as well, which was unbelievable. But yeah, that was the team, man. It was not what it is today. I mean, I if I'm being honest, I liked it better then. I liked
in that simple warehouse with a small coaching staff, and what a coaching staff they had there. I was privileged enough to get to go down there and frequent that place quite a bit. And the coaching staff, with Bill and Norman and Joey Mercury was a fantastic. Was Dr. Tom still there? Or was Dr. Tom left?
Dr. Tom was gone. I actually, you know what? Now that you're saying, I think Bill was still fairly new to the position at that time. I don't know how new. I think it was less than a year. But I remember having just missed Dr. Tom because I know everybody loved Dr. Tom. That was a big thing. I never really I met him briefly one time, but never got to work with him.
And Norman
he's the better Pritchard.
Norman was such a great coach down there too. He still is.
Jerry, you didn't hear me.
What?
I said he's the better Pritchard.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Hey, the saying, Mojo, is I'd take a bullet for Tom. I'd put one in Bruce.
Yeah.
And we say that me and Jerry are Bruce's only friends. So we say that. We say
Well,
that as his
you
own.
are now because he won't take my call. You know?
That's right. That's right. Mojo, did you enjoy it when you got in the ring? When you first got in the ring, what was your feeling? Was it a feeling of, oh, hey, this is cool, I'm comfortable here, this is what I want to do? What was your feeling?
I loved it. I knew that it was kind of crazy because I had spent my whole life actually playing football. I was only watching wrestling, but I mean, right away, I was like, this is for me. This was worth the gamble of giving up on football and, choosing this instead, which was kind of a crazy gamble because I would have made, I think my salary, if I would have made the team, of course, which is always a big if I would have made the team, would have been somewhere in the neighborhood of like almost 500,000 a year in the NFL
Wow.
at the time. And I came over to wrestling where I was making 39,000 a year. And that was more than most of the guys. They were like, don't tell anybody how much you're making. They're all making like, the other new guys.
Don't tell anybody. Always loved that. Don't tell. First guy, hey, what are you making? Well, I'm making, well, damn, why can't I make that much?
Yeah. Well, I got it because I was making $750 a week. They were making $500 a week. Wait, was week? Yeah, no, 39,000 a year versus $31,000 a year. Um, and none of us could pay our bills, but at that time, that extra little bit, was a big freaking difference. So it was brutal, but financially, but in the ring, like performing, wrestling, the practices, I loved it. And it was not easy. It was tough. So I knew that was challenging, which was very important to me as well. I love a good challenge. I mean, they were killing us. Our schedule was
You had
nuts.
some great talent there. Was Bray Wyatt there at the time, and who all was in your classes?
Yeah, Bray was there. I think Bray was just getting ready to leave when I got there. So I only got to spend a little bit of time with him, but he was one that I hit it off with right away, because former football guy himself, played college ball. So, all the ball players we kind of saw eye to eye a little bit in at least certain aspects. But Roman Reigns was there, and I think this was before they started the Shield, of course, because they didn't debut that until the main roster. So Roman was still trying to figure out exactly what kind of character they were going to run with, but they were obviously very high on him on the time. I mean, Seth was there. Dean Ambrose was already up on the main roster, but I think was spending that time where they were trying to figure out how they wanted to debut him, but he was doing non-televised shows. Yeah, we had a pretty good group. The Ascension was really hot at the time. Yeah, it was pretty stacked roster actually. I always see the picture, the roster from that time resurface on socials from time to time.
And were you guys working any shows? When did you first start working any shows?
We started working shows very quickly. So I joined FCW July 2nd, 2012. That was right when they were in the middle of the dreaded Summer Slamorama tour, which was live events throughout Florida 5 days a week, sometimes Wednesday through Sunday, every single day, on top of the 3-hour practice and on top of weightlifting and on top of promo classes. Man, that schedule was not for the faint of heart, I can tell you that. But yeah, like I worked all those shows, like they had us doing like security or like the intermission segment and things like that. But I actually made my wrestling debut, I believe it was a month, 4 weeks after my first day. And then from there I was kind of like, not every show, but here and there. And then I got to the point where I pretty much was the opener for almost my entire NXT career, which was kind of crazy. I used to have nightmares about it after one point. I was like, I feel like I need to be getting outside of this opener because back then you couldn't leave the ring. It had to be straight through. You couldn't have anything, like it had to be the most basic match ever. And after a while, I was like, I feel like I'm not growing at all. I got to try and expand my horizons here, but they wanted me to focus on selling and, putting my energy in the right places. They're like, you got all of these things, but we need you to focus on these two things only. And then once you have those, we can get you, off to the next level or whatever it was. So
You're right, boy. They were really strict about it too. They didn't want guys leaving or going outside the ring. Everything had to be inside. If you're on those first couple of matches, everything had to be exactly like the coaches laid out there. I mean, they had rules because it all served a purpose too. Because as you found out, if the first match is going outside the ring using the steps, using the rope, then when the main event comes along, they need a little extra juice, and they couldn't do it because it'd already been seen 3 or 4 times. So the coaches, there was a method to all that madness there, and I really appreciate that because I got to see a lot of those matches. I really appreciate the work that you guys put in down there because you were restricted on each level of the card. I mean, as you go up, of course, they open the door a little bit more, and you can find out a little bit more what you can do. But you need that experience. You need to know what the first matches are doing, and you need to build up to that main event there. And you had the right coaches.
yeah, I really learned to appreciate that later. I mean, yeah, at the time I was like, man, I really want to try to, do some different things here. But yeah, then you get up to the main roster, and at times, maybe half the matches are working the same body part, and everyone's going out to, like, nothing is being saved for later in the card. So later on, you really started to appreciate all that teaching and the coaching and whatnot. Very, very valuable. Was very grateful for it. Yeah, maybe they should bring some of that back.
Yeah, really. Was you part of the group that made the move, the original move over to Orlando? Or was that later on?
Yes, sir. I was part of that original group. We That was a lot of back and forth for a while trying to set up the PC, but I remember when it was open, I mean,
Yeah, wow.
that was a game changer. I mean, it's even crazier now seeing where it's gotten to, but at the time it was what, 7 rings in the one room and the padded ring and the full weight room. We didn't have to go drive an hour to Rob's gym, and come right back when we're can't even afford gas and we've already had 8 hours of work that day. Like, everything was in house. We had cold tubs and hot tubs. Like, there was actual rehab going on. And I always subscribe to the football way of thinking where, even if you're not injured, you always went in the training center and worked on something. Maybe you hooked up stim to your back, or you hop in the cold, you do preventative maintenance, right? Like, you don't have to be hurt to go in there. So I tried to take full advantage of all that stuff when I was there. I always tried to be like the first person to show up and the last to leave. It was like a candy land in there, man. It was awesome.
When Larry Hegg first came in as a trainer, we had never had trainers anything, So Larry finally came to me and Taker after I don't know how many months. He goes, guys, would you talk to the guys? And I said, why? He goes, nobody will come see me. He said, nobody. He said, you guys have told everybody when the trainer came in, ice is for beer. And so none of the guys would go get ice on him. He goes, would you let them know it's okay? I said, that's all right, fine.
Because at one time, if you went to that training room, you were known as a training room jockey. And
oh my God, it was terrible.
Oh man, you were soft.
guys would have limbs falling off of them, and they'd try to sneak into the training room because they didn't want anybody to see them go to see the trainer.
I used to catch crap from someone like the old school coaches would give me a hard time about sitting in the ice tubs or warming up before practice or whatever it might be.
That's right. The warm up. Back, as Jerry would say, his brother, who's one of the greatest, or maybe the greatest NWA champion ever, would warm up with a Marlboro cigarette. That was about it. And guys, back in the day, my first wrestling match, I'm sitting there in the back. I'm trying to figure out where to get loose or anything. Guys are sitting there smoking. Guys are having a beer. I'm like, you guys are going to the ring, right?
Yeah, they used to call it the Jack Brisco warm up, a pack of marbles and 5 jumping jacks. You go out and do an hour in the match.
Save it for the ring, especially if you're doing an hour, I guess.
Yeah, save it, kid.
So Mojo, when did you get the call up?
I got the call up when we did the draft. We were kind of in a weird situation because I had my solo run in NXT, and then I went away for a shoulder surgery for a bit. I think I was out. I don't know. It wasn't terribly long for a surgery. Maybe 4 to 6 months. I can't remember exactly, but I came back and immediately they, created the Hype Bros with me and Zach Ryder. And I remember when Hunter put it together, he told us, like, don't expect to do much in NXT. We're gonna put you here just to get you guys some reps, and then we're gonna call you up right away. So, like, don't expect big storylines. And that's kind of what we did. We just, brought some energy, did like a whatever match, come in, a little bit of hype, rah rah, finish, get in, get out, get gone, kind of a thing. From there, because Broski was already on the main roster, so he was kind of coming back and forth. Like, he wasn't doing anything on TV at the time. Like, every once in a while he'd show up and like do a job, but he was still like doing their live events. So he'd do those shows and then come down to NXT. So we ended up doing like a year where we were doing TVs and NXT, but the main roster, house shows. And we're just sitting there like we didn't even know what was going on, because it's like, a year of those. It's like, when are we going to debut? We didn't know how it was going to go. So yeah, they ended up drafting me in the draft, and I go up, and I think I made the save when Broski had like a pay-per-view match with Miro, when Miro was, or Rusev, when he was, really hot. Like, when I think he worked Cena that year at Mania. I made the save for Broski, and then we were the Hype Bros right then and there. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't a lot of pomp and circumstance. It was a late draft pick. I was actually kind of pissed because I was towards the end. I would have preferred to have been the last pick, because that storyline, I could have done something with that for sure. Or not drafted, and I could have made it like my football career where I wasn't drafted. That also would have been cool. But yeah, came up, and it was kind of like a save, a non-physical save was my debut, which totally sucked. I think one of the coaches apologized to me at the time. They're like, this isn't the best debut ever, but at least you're on the main roster, kid. I didn't care. I was like, whatever. I just want to get here. I don't care how I get here. Just get me up here. I need a shot, And then that was that. We were doing the Hype Bros until we weren't.
What kind of support were you getting from your parents? I know John tells the story, because you said you were making $39,000, basically $700 a week. You're academic All-American. You had financial background and opportunity to go there that paid a lot more. And here you are at 39. I know with John, when we hired by us, Vince didn't offer him any money, and he went home. His dad was a baker, and they said, so what's your guarantee? Well, I don't have one. So you gave up an opportunity to go get guaranteed money for a handshake, basically. So were you getting support at home or from your parents? Because like you said, you guys weren't you guys were getting minimum wage, basically. And so what was the support at home when you were doing this?
A lot of emotional support. I mean, I think my family. I have a couple of members in my family. One in particular, my aunt, who is the one that I used to intern for at Morgan Stanley when I was a young kid. She's always kind of been like my, giving me all the financial advice and direction. She thought I was insane to leave a salary in the NFL. I've already made it to go start out at the bottom making nothing. But once I made the decision, I think everyone realized, like, this is a good fit. He loves this. This makes a lot of sense, but I had the emotional support. I mean, financial support, there was none. I mean, I'm sure if I would have asked family for help here and there, maybe, some of them could have helped me out. But, I don't know. I've always been one. I want to pay for my own bills. I don't want my family to pay for my college. I'm the one that's made the decision to go to college. I'll pay for my own college, kind of a thing. So I didn't want anybody's help, but I was losing $1,000 a month.
Wow.
The first year or two, when I was wrestling, and then I got my first NXT raise, and I think that was literally, I was making zero. It was a break even, but at least I could pay my rent. And then, obviously started making money after that. But yeah, financially, it was tough. I mean, it's not just me. Everybody kind of went through that. And that's the gamble. It's like, all right, well, if this doesn't work out, and if you don't get called up, it's kind of like those guys that, play arena ball forever, or they keep trying out and getting camp spots, but no one's making a team. At some point, you have to make a decision. How long am I going to keep gambling on this? Because it doesn't work out for most.
You have a friend that was made for this business. He's probably going to be in the NFL Hall of Fame soon. Rob Gronkowski. What was his thought? He was made for this business, by the way, just like you are. Did you talk to him during this? Did he think it was cool that you were doing this?
They all loved it. All the boys. I mean, Rob too. I mean, they loved that I was a wrestler. If you go back and you look, there will be pictures you can find of us at the old FCW arena, and there's literally 8 people at the show, and 5 of them are the Gronkowski brothers. Literally.
That's great.
I remember EC3 doing a match, and he didn't know Rob was there, and he comes out on his entrance, and he was like, "What the hell? Is that Gronk?" Like, and you could see it on the video in the back. I was cracking up. And yeah, man, I mean, they were fans. They wanted to be there. It's not like they were waiting around, waiting for me to make it to the main roster to come and support. Man, that was our group of buddies. Anytime we had off days, it was a group text. Where are we going? You know, sometimes it was to Orlando to see me wrestle. Sometimes it was to New England to go see Rob play. I mean, we had a bunch of other buddies that were in the NFL at the time, so we were bouncing around city to city. But yeah, it was cool, man. They were along for the ride from the start. I mean, especially too because their dad's the one that made the intro and kicked this entire thing off from the start. So it was really cool to have them with us.
And the tag team with Zach, you guys, how long were you guys together? Because I thought your tag team, I loved your tag team with Zach. I love Zach. You know, it's such a fun tag team, the Hype Brothers. How long were you guys together?
Shoot, I don't know, maybe like 3 years. Yeah, probably about a few years. Actually, I think the thing started because me and Rob were partying in Miami one time, and we filmed a promo about being tag partners in WWE, and it went viral. And I think Hunter saw it and was like, "Oh, like the Hype Bros. I like that. Who do we got that might be a good fit here in wrestling?" And he's like, "Oh, okay, Broski's free. Let's plug him in." I think that's actually how that team started. But you know,
So Broski is a replacement for Gronk.
Pretty much. I think that was legitimately how that tag team started. I mean, of course, he put a different spin on it. I mean, we tried to find the best way to make it work. And in the beginning, he was the over the top woo 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 bro and all that, and I was even more over the top with all the excessive energy, you know. So we were kind of doing that dance, and then it kind of became the odd couple where we were playing the opposite thing for a while, but I always thought if they took our real life dynamic and that was the real Hype Bros, that would have been just gold. I mean, we started tapping into that in like YouTube segments and stuff like that, stuff that, you know, they didn't put on TV. And I always thought to this day it was really extremely entertaining, maybe just because I know him personally and we couldn't be more opposites of one another. But I always thought that could have been a fun way to go. I mean, neither of us wanted to be in that tag team, truthfully, but we really did try to do our best to try and find a way to make it work as best as we could.
You know, it's funny because those YouTube segments were so good. You know, we had the JBL and Cole show, and Zach was a huge part of that, always. But none of the writers or anybody had anything to do with the creative. So they didn't really want to put it over. You know, it's like, oh, that's not our stuff, you know, but we were getting all these kind of views, you know. I mean, Zach has created this huge internet following, which is exactly what the Paul brothers did. You know, but he was way ahead of his time, still is. But it's kind of strange because there was no writer to back it. So there wasn't really like, hey, look what he's doing on YouTube. It's like, oh, he's just doing something on YouTube.
You know, I find that amazing too. That here's and you're right, man. That YouTube, to me, that was really the most entertaining part of the shows. You know, the offspring of the shows. I really loved it, but I didn't know there was no backing from the writers or anything like that.
You know, I think that's what it was, is when people were being organic and being themselves and doing the things that they thought they were best at, it made a difference and the fans could see right through it all and they loved it. I mean, my best promo I ever cut in my entire career was a promo I cut about Zach when we, you know, split and, you know, I turned on him and we did our angle, but it wasn't for TV. I just cut it on my cell phone when I was working out one day in the gym. I thought the lighting looked kind of badass. I was throwing up some weight. It was leading into our big blow off match. And I just pulled out my phone and cut a promo and I posted it. And it went everywhere, and I know it was received well. I remember because I didn't get a lot of mic time at that point. My whole career was Mojo's the energy guy. Let him be hyped in on the entrance. He'll do all of his hype stuff in the match, and then get him out. Let the other people speak on the mic and do the backstages and all of these things. And I cut that promo, and everyone was like, "Oh man, I didn't even know Mojo could talk like this." So I was thinking to myself, I was like, "Ooh, writers are gonna see this, and next week it's gonna be on." And it was for everybody but me, because everyone had their phones out the next week, and they all had their cell phone promos on the show, and that became a whole thing for everyone but me. I was like, "Damn it!"
That's the absolute worst, when you create something and somebody steals it and makes it bigger. You're like, you bastard, you absolute bastard.
It's like, throw me a bone here, guys. Give me some credit in the corner at least, if you're not going to use it for me.
When did you find out you were winning the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal?
Maybe it was a week or two before. I had just started like my solo babyface run, and they were trying to take advantage again, trying to find the best way to deliver my energy to the crowd, which was something Vince always told me. He was like, I really don't know how to book you. I'm not sure what to do with this. We have everything we need, but I don't really know what to do with it. So I remember we were trying to figure out what to do there, but they told me that I was going to be winning the Andre, and they had been kind of building to it. I was on a big undefeated run, and I was the first to declare for the Andre that year. But yeah, they called me into the office, and they told me that I was, going to be winning, and we were trying to find like the way we could hype it up the most. Where are we going to go from here? How can we take this battle royal that I think at that point it was starting to become like a pre-show kind of a thing already. We were trying to find the ways to maximize it, and then I pitched him the idea of bringing in Rob to do it, because I knew he always wanted to do something, even though he never paid his dues in the ring. I felt like all those times coming to Tampa, sitting in the crowds of 5 to 10 people, I was like, all right, he's shown love, like let's get him in here. But we came up with that idea, and it kind of made it better. We actually moved it to the pre-show on purpose because more households would see it, because it was on cable as opposed to pay-per-view at the time.
Right.
So I was actually grateful for that. I know most guys were, want to be on the main card and they don't want to be on the pre-show, but I was like, 10 times the people are going to see it on the pre-show, this is absolutely the better move. And yeah, we came up with all that, and it worked out even better, I think.
Was that the one where Rob hit Jinder with the tackle?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah. 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 Rob forgot the one part about working the tackle.
Yeah. I think Jinder told him. Jinder was
I'm sure he did. Jinder's a tough guy. Nearly anybody in that spot, you got this guy who's going to be in the Hall of Fame would tell him, just hit me, I'll be fine.
Yeah, because I feel like too with Rob, he probably would have tried to be too respectful, where he brothers him too much, and it ends up looking like crap. So I'm glad they just ran right through it. It looked great. Jinder ended up bouncing his head off like the bottom rope, so we
sure
did. Hurt his neck, but he was fine. He was good.
Yeah, it was like when Hugh Jackman broke Dolph's jaw.
You gotta be careful when you bring in those outsiders, man.
Really, and Dolph, he's a super tough guy. Same thing goes, just whack me. Wow.
He whacked.
When Braun had his match with Tyson Fury, I remember we were all like trying to mess with him and give him a hard time and get in his head. I mean, he was fine, but it's like, could you imagine if Tyson just started trying to light him up? I mean,
right.
Braun's a tough guy, but Braun probably would have started shooting on him back. He would have had to. That would have been nuts. That's the risk you take, I guess.
Yeah, especially when you're in somebody else's element. When you're in somebody else's element, it's different. It's like Matt Hardy with Evander Holyfield. If Holyfield had just beat Tyson, and he got boxing gloves under the guard. Like, if Holyfield wants to do something here, then it doesn't matter who's on the other side, because Tyson couldn't handle him.
Yeah, exactly.
So after the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, what was Vince's thoughts then? I mean, did you have a lot of interaction with Vince?
We were meeting pretty frequently. I mean, obviously talking to him every week after, after I came back through the curtain and getting some feedback. I always used to go straight to Vince to try and see if that was, what he was looking for. Yeah, that was kind of the time where they were having me do this weird thing where I was bringing the trophy around and like talking to kids, and I think the point was try to make me super baby face, right? Like, here's a good guy and he's, trying to be a role model for the children, and he's always smiling. Almost, I don't know, I kind of used to, in my head at the time, I was getting vibes of old Rocky, where he was smiling so much and wearing the blue stuff and all of this and that, and I was like, we just didn't know where it was going. I remember, Vince telling me, he was like, you're one of my strongest guys, you're one of my fastest guys, you're one of my smartest guys, and you got, more energy than probably anyone I've ever met. I just don't know what to do with you. And I remember telling him, you just said what to do with me, like those things. Let's do all of that, But yeah, it was just the creative. We just never. I used to submit pitches all the time. It just they never ended up knowing exactly what to do with me, which I always thought was strange.
Yeah, and was it just? It had to be frustrating for you, when the guy that's created so many things tells you, "I love you, I think you're great, not sure what to do with you." That had to be really frustrating for you.
Yeah, and it was, but especially when I'm looking at certain people being given these amazing storylines and gimmicks and all of these things, it's hard not to notice that. But for me, I always wanted to focus on myself. Whatever. Like I can't look at other people and I don't know what's going on behind closed doors for other talents. I can only focus on myself. So for me, it was I used to literally go and write up these pitches, and I'd get photo and video assets and put together essentially business proposals, and I would submit them every week. And maybe once every month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever, I would go into Vince's office, and I, how it was, sit outside his door for like 6 hours waiting for your turn. And you go in there and you make the pitch and you hope it goes somewhere. And I used to get what I would call like these little semi pushes where we would start to set up a push, and we'd do the enhancement matches and the get over matches. And then when it was time to actually get the push, they would be over. So I always called them semi pushes. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of like the ebb and flow. You're doing something, you're not doing something, you're doing something, you're not doing something. And I always, years later, I would have loved to have had, an actual storyline. I didn't really have a real storyline my entire career. I never got to have on-air matches with the same person more than once consecutively where we could build off a previous match and have backstages. I think I only once had an in-ring mic battle, and it was with Kevin Owens, and it was on the Christmas episode, and they ended up like cutting out half of it because we ended up going off script and it went pretty long. And I thought that's when the gold came out, but nope, none of that ever saw the light of day, which sucked. But yeah, I never really got into any of those things. I mean, at the end of the day, when your career is done, you'll always look back and wish you had more and did more things and had more runs. So you just got to be happy with the fact that you did have some cool moments and you had some victories. And I got my Mania moment. I mean, technically twice, even though that second one was a COVID year, no one was there, so it's hard to count that one. But had a good couple moments. I'm really grateful for it. But yeah, it would have been cool to have a couple of bigger moments. It does feel like there's a little unfinished business, and I definitely want to get back in the ring at some point. But yeah, man, it is what it is, right?
Did you ever think when we got done with WWE that you wanted to go somewhere else and do something? Or did you just want to start the business up? I know you got really sick with COVID. I don't know if that had anything to do with your plans, but what was your thoughts when you got done? Did you want to start the business? Did you want to continue in the wrestling business as a wrestler? What were your thoughts?
I guess in my head it was kind of similar to football. Like for me, I was either going to play in the NFL or I wasn't going to play anywhere at all. As soon as the NFL is done, I'm done, and for the longest time I was looking at WWE the same way because, without COVID, I feel like I would have been there a very long time. In ring was one thing, but I had a lot of value to the company outside of the ring as well. So I knew that, they were very happy with what I was giving them and, what I was bringing to the table. So I was never job scared at any point during my entire career until I got COVID. And then that kind of changed everything. So I guess I never really got to wonder if I would have wrestled somewhere else, because when I got COVID, it was done. Like I could not wrestle anywhere. I couldn't even breathe. Breathing was brutal. It was very difficult for me. So wrestling anywhere was off the table. And then, I started, Paragon Talent Group, my management company, mostly for wrestlers, and that company really took off and, blew up. And, for me personally, I still feel that my greatest contribution to the business has been through Paragon as opposed to anything I did inside the ring. By the time my lungs got better and I felt like I could perform and compete, it didn't make sense to go back even to WWE at that point. I make more money doing this than I ever did wrestling, even in my best year, by a pretty significant margin, actually. So financially, it certainly doesn't make sense. I mean, granted, wrestling, even when I first came into it, it didn't make financial sense at that point either, even though later, of course, it paid off big time. But at this point, I don't think it would make sense for me to go back anywhere full time. I still do want to wrestle and find the right moment. I don't know if that means doing a seasonal run or a limited run somewhere or reduced dates kind of a thing. I never thought I would say this, but honestly, the thing that makes the most sense to me would just be showing up and doing a random indie here and there. I always thought after WWE it would only be the big arena and stadium shows, but I guess strip it all away, I just miss wrestling more than I miss the crowds and the pomp and circumstance of it, which, even for me, that I think that kind of surprised me a little bit. But yeah, I mean, whether that's going back and wrestling in front of 8 people, again, and just doing it for fun.
I don't know who would show up and do a random indie. It just doesn't make it didn't make any sense to me that somebody would show up and just clothesline somebody or something. That didn't make it. I don't know anybody who would do that.
Pretty good to me. Just show up, clothesline someone's head off. All right, I'm good. No bumps.
All right, I'm good. We're going home.
If you got to do it right, Mojo, that's the way to do it. Just show up, clothesline, get your money, and leave, man. He got it figured out really good. For Texan, he does have those moments where the light bulb comes on, but.
Somebody called me recently, Mojo. They asked me, "So you want to come in?" I said, "Wait a minute." I said, "That's my birthday." I said, "I ain't doing a job." And
yeah.
like I'd wrestle anyway.
So, hey, you guys are in the Hall of Fame, man. You do what you want.
Hey, I know we're running really long, but tell us real quick about Paragon, because I'm so interested in this. First of all, I'm very proud of you for doing it. I think it's wonderful what you're doing.
Yeah, I think it's great, man. I've really been looking forward when John told me he got you. Really been looking forward because I've been kind of following along here. It's an outside gig that's really needed in our business. There's a couple other I'd like to talk to you when we go off the air about. Some friends of mine started different things. I think it would work for you. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing, how it came about.
Yeah, so I mean, Paragon was in my back pocket for at least half of my, WWE career. And, coming over from the NFL where you got an agent and a manager and a union and everybody looking out for you and looking out for life after, the field, and getting you all these opportunities outside of, off the field, while you're playing. All those opportunities, a lot of those players are making more money doing those things than they are even playing the game. So you come over to wrestling and there's just so little of that. Obviously when you're with WWE, you're not really allowed to do too much outside of it. But even then, when you are able to, a lot of guys, they just don't really know where to get started with it. And, some guys have some opportunities, but, I don't care who you are, there's more opportunities that can come to any one of us. Right. I mean, for me, when I'm doing my job, it's such an easy thing once you get the right people on the phone, because you're not selling athletes that have the personality of paint drying, that are really, really good at shooting 3-pointers or really, really good at catching a pass. But if you put them into a commercial, they are the most dry, boring personality ever. You know, some of these guys, maybe not the most educated. They don't know how to win a crowd. You know, some of these pro bowlers, maybe that have like 40,000 followers on social media. You know, it's hard to monetize that regardless of who you are. Then you have these pro wrestlers that are the most entertaining people on the planet. They can do everything on the fly. They don't need scripts ahead of time. They just show up and they just can turn the switch on and be in character right away. They all have mega followings. They all have brands tied to them as well. So coming back to Gronk, there's a reason why Gronk does so well with his endorsement deals. It's not only because he was the best tight end ever. That's actually a smaller piece than the fact that Gronk is a personality as opposed to just a player. Like he has a gimmick, and brands want the gimmick more than they want, you know, Super Bowl championships in a lot of cases. So wrestlers can kind of combine all these things. So, you know, starting this business in an untapped space, Paragon just blew up. And, you know, luckily we were able to get just about all the talent we needed to talk to. Wrestlers trust nobody. So having been one, it was actually able to, you know, it was pretty easy to get started having everybody's trust. And then from there, it was just a matter of convincing all these brands and all these buyers, you know, what they're buying and putting this into their context and, you know, their vocabulary, which, you know, that's where my business background finally paid off. Spent all that money on these degrees to, you know, get hit on a football field and then take bumps in the ring. I never actually got to use it. Now I'm finally using it years later, but you put it all together and Paragon just blew up. So it's been really cool, man. It's been really happy with how it's.
For an example, what's Paragon do for the guys? Say you get a guy that's come in, he's had like a 10-year career, and he really, like you described, most of our guys, they don't have that advanced degree in education. Most of them have high school education, but they're very bright young men and women, but they don't know how to succeed in a business world. What do? You give them guidelines, or you take them in, you introduce them, get contacts, or how do you manage one of these?
So we're doing a lot of things. The short answer is that it's kind of categorical representation for all the talent that we're working with. So to take you through it, one piece of the business is the contract. So we're negotiating talent deals with WWE, AEW, TNA, New Japan, every single week. We have tons of talent that we're doing those contracts for. On the independent level, we're doing indie bookings. We're doing autograph signings for tons of the talent. We're doing visas actually for the international talent. So, you know, maybe they get let go from one of the big houses. We're able to, you know, use Paragon to keep them in the country or bring in new talent from overseas to run the American circuits. That's the wrestling part of the company. Outside of wrestling is the brand side, and for that, that's the third party sponsorships. We're able to sell sponsorships for the promotions themselves. So, you know, with AEW and some of these places, we actually can sell sponsorships for their television shows, their pay-per-views, all of those things. But, you know, maybe it's the paid social media deals, maybe it's the in-person appearances and activations, commercials and television and casting for movies. That's something we've started to do recently. So we've been assisting with, you know, helping place talent in those opportunities. It just keeps growing. We're learning more and more as we're going. We're bringing on new people to work with us on our team in our house and expand what we're able to offer. We want to help the talent in any way we possibly can, and that's been the goal.
Right.
Is your aunt at Morgan Stanley? Is she finally okay with this?
Yeah, she's okay with it now. She's okay with it now. It actually didn't take her long to be okay with it because she never watched wrestling. So I don't think she realized how big time it was and how global it is and the size of the followings. And probably more important than that, the fans are more hardcore than any type of fans anywhere, you know, like for anything. So I think once you get an inside look at what that looks like from a business perspective, it makes way more sense than originally thought.
Hey, Mojo, you wrote one of the things, if you don't mind me bringing it up, you wrote one of the best things I've ever read on the internet. It was really incredible what you wrote. It was written from the heart, and I sent you a note afterwards telling you how much I loved what you wrote. It was about the Israeli-Gaza-Palestine conflict, that you had relatives in both. You didn't like it. Tell us just a little bit about that, and maybe some of the feedback, but tell us a little bit about what your thoughts were with that, because you have a very unique perspective on it, because your heritage is one, but your relatives are also in the other. So you have a very unique perspective. But tell us just a little bit about that.
Yes, sir. So I was born and raised here, but my dad's Palestinian. He was born in Jerusalem. My mom's half Syrian. My family was big in the United Nations, so almost everybody in my family worked in the United Nations in some capacity at some time. So I think English was my dad's third language. My mom learned English and Arabic simultaneously, I believe, but they grew up all over the place. I mean, my mom's mom is from Kentucky, so she's local, but you know, my family was from all over, so we always kind of grew up with kind of a dual background for being born and raised, you know, here in America. So it's you know, it's just a horrible situation going on over there, and it's really sad to see. And my dad's entire side of the family is still out in the Middle East, whether you know they're in Palestine or whether they're in you know Saudi Arabia or some of the other countries over there now. I knew something needed to be said. It's obviously been an issue for a long time, and the history is pretty well documented, so I probably don't need to go into that. But obviously, in recent years, things have just gotten much worse over there, and I think I think it's been really nasty because it's very easy for people to think that you have to choose one side, that you have to choose the side of Palestine or you have to choose the side of Israel. And I think a lot of people should be looking at this thing from the side of what about choosing the side of humanity? You know, that there's innocence everywhere in every country. And, you know, whether there's corrupted government officials or, you know, militants, or there's always going to be innocent people everywhere. And I think trying to find a way to unite the world as opposed to build more fences and walls. I think that's got to be the approach that everyone takes here. And I wrote a statement last year, and it was something that I, you know, really put a lot of time into. I put my heart and soul into, and it was a tough one, man, because you know how social media is going to be. No matter what you say,
Yeah.
you are opening yourself up for a world of hurt. And until that time, I had never spoken on anything politically in my entire life. I always wanted my presence to be something that, you know, brought energy to people and was uplifting and was always fun. And I never posted anything about, you know, anything negative or something that might tear us apart or bring us down. And that was the first time I had written a statement, and I must have reread that thing 1,000 times. And before I posted it, you know, I called all of my business partners, you know, I called everyone that I work with, and I told them, I was like, I didn't ask them permission for it because that was going to go up either way, but I just put it on their radar, like, hey, tomorrow, I just want you to know I'm releasing a statement. And as a business partner of yours, you know, someone that works for your company, represents your company, or, you know, even within my own company, I didn't want anyone to be shocked. You know, I wanted it to come from me. And I posted that statement. I was happy to see how well it was received. I think it did a lot of good for a lot of people. And, you know, since that time, whereas I never really spoke politics before, I think that kind of blew that whole thing wide open. So I've been posting very regularly, especially about that particular conflict. But, you know, I guess you get to the point eventually where you're able to accomplish some really cool things in your life. And, you know, whether it's football, whether it's wrestling, but, you know, you're giving your body and you know, you're making a living doing these things. But at some point, you know, you got to stand for something. And before, I always kind of did my stuff behind the scenes. I always never wanted to be that guy that does something great and then tells everybody about it on social media and is trying to get their followers and monetize doing a good deed. You know, I never even, like, you know, claim charitable contributions on my taxes. Even I try to just, you know, if I'm going to do a good deed, I'm just going to do it. But yeah, you know, I think that was the thing that, you know, I really had to speak out about. And you know, part of it, I think, too, was I don't know if I've actually told anybody this before, but we had a wrestler that was over there in the Middle East pretty recently. It was actually only 2-3 months before, you know, October the 7th, and they were in Palestine, and there was a museum there, and they kind of had, it wasn't anything special. I mean, obviously, these are people that have more or less been enslaved and have nothing. It's, a whole nother conversation there, but they had kind of like this like wall of fame kind of thing in this museum, and I was on it, and he sent me a picture of it, and it was like, man, for me that was the coolest thing that's ever happened to me, just thinking of these kids that are getting bombed to pieces all day, every day, no hope really, and being able to be on that wall that's someone who's Palestinian, and hopefully at least mentally making a difference for people that are suffering. I mean, for me that was the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. So yeah, it was really special. And you think of things like that, and it's time to stand up, and it's time to do anything you possibly can to make this world a better place. And I know it's kind of a generic term or phrase, but it's true. We need more of that. It's a very polarizing world out there. We need to find ways to unite us rather than divide us.
Yeah, and Frederick Douglass, I believe it was, who said the silent man is complicit. And so many people talk about athletes. What right do you have to say? Well, what right do you have to stay silent? If you want to stay silent, I understand that. But telling LeBron James shut up and dribble, as somebody said, a couple of years ago, here's a guy who's done really cool things for kids. And if you have a voice, what good is it if you don't use it? Especially if you use it the way you did. That was one of the best things I've seen written. I always just was posted on the internet, where we went on there, you get to see it all the time, because it was so well written and it was so articulate. And you can't read that. I mean, I understand if you're a troll, you can read anything and hate it. But if you're a normal person, you read that, you go, you know what? I get that. There's humanity here. And we got to start thinking things a little bit different.
I really appreciate you saying that. I mean, when you sent me that message, it meant the world to me, because here's a guy that has, done so much for me in my career, guidance. I mean, shoot, even when you were doing commentary, always putting me over and hyping me up, but just, someone that came from, the same walk of life that I did before me, and, coming in from sports and making his name in this business. I mean, that endorsement I mean, look, complimenting my work and trying to help me out at work is one thing, but on a human and personal level, receiving that message from you, it really did mean the world to me, and I'm forever grateful for that.
Well, I appreciate what you wrote, and Mojo, I can't thank you enough for coming on our show. Mr. Brisco said, we're so excited. We've been wanting to have you on forever, and it's our fault for not getting you earlier, but I'm so glad we did get you, and I'm so glad about what you're doing. You're doing incredible things, and so proud of you. So happy for you, all that kind of stuff, and we're always looking forward to what you're going to do next.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. This was so much fun. Again, I would just log in the back room and listen from here on out, because you guys back and forth. It's world class. I love every bit of it.
We get to sit around. We appreciate guys so much during their career. I mean, we appreciate what you go through, because we went through the same thing. We went through those same struggles. Listen to your struggles. You're shooting ideals out there. You're giving it 100%, and all of a sudden you see these guys just sitting around doing nothing, and are getting these pushes, and to come out of the business with the positive attitude that you have, that shows you what kind of human you are. And I appreciate it. You've always been a bright spot, always put a smile on my face every time I come across you, and I appreciate that. And congratulations what you're doing. I think you're showing that you care about this business, because you're helping these guys transition. To me, that's the most important thing in our business, because our careers don't last forever. And I'm one to tell you, once your career is over, unless you get really, really lucky and get into office somewhere, get in a promotion, your career is basically over. And how you transition into real life is a problem to a lot of guys, and you're helping them find a solution, which is you got to feel bad. It's got to put that smile on your face every time you help one of these guys, because that could have been you, So thank you, Mojo.
Thank you guys so much. An absolute honor to be on your show.